If you would you please tell me a story in 1 or 2 words about a time when you were on a team that was just great? Un mot, 2 mots. Inspiring. It was inspiring to be on a great team. Pleasant. How did you feel about the work you did? Conflicted? Oh, constructive. Sometimes there's conflict on great teams, but the work was constructive. Yeah. Confident? Proud of it? So how many of you would like to be on one of those great teams again? Yeah. So those of you who are managers, how would you want people in your organization to be on a team like that? Where they felt, they were inspired, they were doing great work, that they felt good about coming into work? Unlike computers, people cannot be programmed, but we can do certain things that will make it much more likely that we will have great teams. And we will have teams that are able to self-organize and do really excellent work without a whole lot of management looking after them, right? So, when I talk about self-organizing teams, this is the image that often comes to mind. That the teams will go off on their own and they don't need no stinking managers anymore. Just leave us alone and let us do our work. How many of you have run into that where you work? Yeah, that happens sometimes. And I think part of the reason that happens is that in some of the early writing about Agile methods, some of the pundits said, we don't need any managers. They just get in the way. And I don't think that was actually particularly helpful. I think there's a big part for managers to play in organizations, but it's a different part than they may have been playing up until they started working with Agile and really using teams to get work done. Now, teams are one sort of a goal-oriented social unit that tends to be very powerful in organizations because teams, when they stay together, learn how to work together effectively, they learn how to learn together, they build trust, they learn how to deal with each other's strengths and weaknesses and make the most of what they have. So it's an excellent way to accomplish work in organizations. Brings a lot of creativity, brings a lot of engagement. Teams can very often solve problems that individuals working separately cannot solve. So it's useful to know something about how to help teams work and how to establish a self-organizing team. So, does anyone have a guess about these numbers and what they might mean? Well, they add up to 100, so they might be about 1%. Yes, no guesses? All right, I will reveal the secret. These numbers actually come out of some research by a guy named J. Richard Hackman, who has been doing research on teams for many, many decades. And most recently, he's been looking at teams working in the space of intelligence and counterterrorism. So knowledge work teams, not software teams, but knowledge work. Is there something I'm doing that's making this sound, this clunking sound? Is there something I can stop doing to make it stop? No? Is it driving you guys crazy? No? Okay, I'll just keep going then. So he's been doing work with counterintelligence teams, and what he has discovered is that Thank you so much. What he has discovered is that roughly 60% of the variation in team effectiveness is related to the design of the team. That is how the people are selected, how the work is designed, how the goal is formulated, and the other initial conditions that exist for the team. 60% of the variation in effectiveness. 30% of the variation in effectiveness comes from the way the team is launched. So the way they're actually brought together and the way they first begin to engage with each other and engage with their task. 10% is related to the various interventions and coaching that happens after the team has started. Does this number seem surprising? These figures seem surprising? Because in most organizations, most of the effort goes at that end, not at this end. Right? One of the favorite ways to bring a team together in the U.S. is we call it the 5 U's method, and it goes like this. Do you have the 5 U's method here? You don't know? Okay, it goes like this. You. You're a team. It's quick, but it's not particularly effective. So we're going to talk about some of the things we can do to make it more possible to have a really great team, to have a fabulous self-organizing team. Now, I should say something about what we mean by self-organizing. Self-organizing does not mean... Oh, I'm going the wrong way. It does not mean this. It does not mean that you get rid of all the managers. What it means is that as a unit, as a group, those people are capable of coming up with new ways of working and new processes and new ideas when they're faced with new challenges. It doesn't mean they go off on their own and just do whatever they want to do. It doesn't mean that they have no connection to the organization. They are firmly in the context of the organization, but because they are given the reign of their creativity, they can come up with new ways to solve new problems when the environment presents those. And we all know that's happening all the time in software. So, let's talk about the initial conditions. This is the 60% of variation comes from these initial conditions. First, you have to have a real purpose. If there is not a real purpose for the team to be together, if there is not someone in the organization who is eagerly awaiting what this team is producing, there's no reason for them to be there. If their work is not interdependent on a day-to-day basis, they might be a work group. That's okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But if they have to work together, if all of their skills are required and they have to collaborate on a day-to-day basis in order to create the product they're creating, then you may need to have a team. So real purpose, real team. They need information about the work that they're going to do. And that means not just the individual tasks or a particular set of stories. They need to know about how this work fits in with the bigger context of what the company is doing, what the product is doing, the customers. They need to understand deeply the customers and the market that you're going into. I came across some research recently that said something like 2 out of 10 people in most organizations have a deep understanding of what their customers are doing and what their market's in. So when people don't have that understanding, they can't make good decisions. So it's really important that we establish that. They need to have material support. I mean, that seems obvious. They need the right equipment, they need the right tools, they need the right sorts of rooms that are going to enable them to really work well together. But you'd be surprised at the number of times I run across teams that are dislocated. They have people all across the world, but the only material support they have for communicating is a phone. Right? So that's not, you have to think more broadly about what the material support is. On the other hand, it's not necessary for the team to have everything in the world. Constraints can help foster creativity. So there's a fine line and there's a judgment in there. But without the equipment to do the work, 1, they won't be able to do it, and 2, we're sending a message that we want you to do your work, but we're going to tie one hand behind your back. And that's not a message that leads to engagement, it leads to creativity. So they need to know about the context deeply. They need to have adequate material support. They need to have access to expertise outside the team. Because it's impossible to put together the perfect team. I see this happen in a lot of organizations, that every project that comes along, they try to put together the perfect team for that project. That does a couple of things. It means that teams are churning. They're churning all the time. They're changing over before they've really learned how to work together, before they've developed that trust in each other, and they've learned how to learn together. But it also makes the organization not very flexible. So you put together a good enough team that has near skills, and then they learn how to learn. And if you give them access to expertise outside the team, they can solve problems that might be a little bit outside their skill range if they have that extra expertise. So that's another pillar. And finally, a connection to the organization. So as I said, self-organizing teams aren't out there on their own being cowboy coders doing whatever they please. They need to be firmly connected to the organization. And we do that in Agile through a lot of feedback loops. We have demos, so people are continually showing the software they're building. We build in feedback so that they understand the quality of the product. They understand how people are receiving the product. But those connections to the organization are one of the things that really helps any self-organizing team steer, because they're constantly getting that feedback to know, yes, we're going in the right direction, we're doing the right things, we're working well together. These are all about initial conditions. Really critical, that part of that 60% of variation in team effectiveness. So how many of you can tell me how many legs does this dog have? 4. Well, some people would try to tell me that this dog has 5 legs. Let's say call his tail a leg and say, well, he's 5 legs. So this happens in organizations all the time, that people will call something that is not a team, and then expect people to act as a team and do what a team can do. So it's really critical that we pay attention to that. We are talking about a social unit that is actually a team. So the research says, and this is carried out in my experience, that teams need to be interdependent. As I mentioned, all of their skills need to be necessary to produce the final product. It's not like a ski team where everyone has the same skills and it's the accumulation of their scores that make them successful. They have to have a range of skills necessary to do that. They need to have that compelling goal. And the closer it relates to the customer, the more compelling and engaging it's going to be. They need to be mutually accountable for their work. So it's not a situation where, well, if this gentleman in the first row gets his tasks done and the rest of the row doesn't get their tasks done, he succeeds. The whole row has to get their work done for that team to succeed. The whole team has to get their work done. The teams need to be small. Most of the research I've seen shows that the perfect number, and we know we can't always have things be perfect, but the perfect number for a team is 5. How many of you are in teams with 5 people? How many are on teams that are smaller than that? How many are teams that are bigger than that? Are we talking 10 people? Who's anyone on a team that's bigger than 10? Yeah. What often happens when the team is bigger than 10 is that the work is big enough that the work naturally breaks down, and therefore the people break down into sub-teams or subgroups. It's not bad, it just is, and it's something to be aware of when you're looking at creating a team. Also, the reason behind 5 being that sort of magic number is that in theory, each additional person brings some theoretical level of productivity. But being on a team, people have to maintain relationships and communication. And so that process overhead cancels out some of that theoretical productivity. And it reaches equilibrium at about 6 or 7, and when you get to about 10, it starts going down. So we can't always live in a perfect world, but that's what the research shows. And teams need to be together for a while. People are not a team on the first day after you've done the 5 U's method of selection, that they are not a team. It takes time for them to work together and learn how to be together effectively in order for them to really be a team. So they need some history. So that's when you have a real team. Calling something other than a team doesn't make it so. So we need to be clear on what we're calling a team. This is actually comes from one of our American presidents. He used to tell this joke a lot, Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln liked this little story. Okay, so those are the initial conditions. We need to give people that starting ground if we want them to successfully self-organize. The 30%. What goes into the launch? There's a couple things that come up here. And my experience is that very small things that happen at the beginning of the life of a group can affect that group for the rest of the time it's together. And you'd be astonished at how small those things can be. One group I worked with started out by lining people up in order of the number of years they had been at the company. And that team developed a pattern of always deferring to the people who had been at the company longest. Whether they had the best ideas, whether they were the best at anything, that small little thing about staying status, longevity at the company matters, and we're going to line you up along there, made a difference for how that team functioned. So little things can make a big difference when we're starting a team. But there's also a really big thing that makes a difference when we're starting a team. And that is the relationship between managers and developers. Now, if we're coming out of a traditional organization where developers have done the work and managers have told them what to do and tracked progress and checked in to make sure everything was going well and was frequently checking in, we have a dynamic where the managers are always looking down at the team to see how they're doing, and the team members are always looking up at the manager for signals and for direction. This isn't bad, it just is. It's just part of the nature of living in hierarchical organizations. But when we look at starting self-organizing teams, this dynamic can get in our way. And it plays out very often when a manager will come along and say, "All right, team, you're self-organizing now." Or sometimes they'll even say, "You're empowered now." And the team will say, "Well, this sounds like what they said 2 years ago. I wonder if they really mean it this time." And so they'll kind of hesitate. They'll watch the signals, looking up at the manager. And meanwhile, the manager is saying, "I told you you were you're self-organizing, you're empowered. Why aren't you doing anything?" And the team's looking up, other team's looking up. Wait, does he really mean it? And the manager's saying, "Why aren't you doing anything?" And finally, in frustration, he goes in and says, "Look, get started on this. Do it this way." And then what do you think happens? Then the team says, "See, he didn't really mean it. It's just like last time." So this is what we're struggling against, both as managers and as team members when we want to have self-organizing teams. So, some things that you can do at the beginning of a team to help mitigate this dynamic. I don't want to talk about that now. I want to talk about this. So, one of the areas where I see a lot of teams get tangled up has to do with who makes which decisions. Because team members often think, "Wow, we're self-organizing now. We get to decide everything." And the manager may even say, "Oh no, that's your issue. You decide." Until the team does something that, was really risky, or they didn't understand the implications of it, and then he comes in and says, "Oh, you can't do that." And you know what that does? It sends us back into that circle, right? It sends us back into the looking up, looking down. So getting clear about which decisions are going to be with the team You can make all the technical decisions that don't affect other products. You can make all the technical decisions that don't affect our future migration path to X, Y, or Z. You can make the decisions about your coding standards. You can make any decisions that don't affect another team working on the same product. So it doesn't matter exactly what it is in your organization, but you need to be clear about what those boundaries are, right? And then you need to be clear about what the shared decisions are, which are decisions that the team and the manager make together. So one of the ones that comes up in this area very often is who gets to work on the team. In most organizations, traditionally, that's been a management decision. In some organizations, not many, but in some, it's a team decision. The team decides alone who's going to join the team. In many organizations that are being successful with Agile teams, it's a shared decision. So the manager has a part to play, but the team members are very, very involved in interviewing the candidate, in doing auditions with the candidate, so they might sit down and pair program together or pair test together or work together on a UI, so they get some sense of how the person works together, how they fit in. And then the manager and the team jointly discuss this person's qualifications, both technical and domain and interpersonal, and how they might fit in, and they make a shared decision about that. This is an interesting one, and I think it's a hard one sometimes for managers to let go of, particularly when there's liability issues involved, which is why I think the managers still need to be in that decision. But the person who makes a hiring decision has the most vested interest in that person being successful. And who do you want that to be? The people who work with them day to day? Or the manager who doesn't work with them day to day? So this is why I think this is a really important shared decision. So that's one example. There are many, many other things that you might do as shared decisions. Who goes to train? What kind of training people go to? I think can be a shared decision. Sometimes it's a team decision. This illustrates a situation where the money has to follow the decision, though. Because if you set up a situation, and a fellow was telling me about this not too long ago, where his manager said, well, you guys decide what training you go to, here's your budget, spend it however you want. And then somebody said, okay, I want to go to training, I want to go to this workshop in Albuquerque. And the manager said, well, I don't know about that workshop. Tell me, I need to see some material on it before you can go. So the guy went back and got material, and then he said, well, I've checked with HR, and nobody at HR has heard about this, so you need to do some more research. And so the guy went back and did some more research and came back. And about the fourth time that the manager said, go back and get more information, what do you think happened? He gave up, and that circle was back in place, right? Looking up, looking down. So clarity about decisions is really, really critical to making sure that people understand where their autonomy is. They need to know where that autonomy is. Do you have electric fence here? Do you guys know about underground electric fence? Not the above ground kind. Well, in the US, they have this thing called electric fence that people who own dogs often get, and they bury the fence under the ground. It's a terrible idea. It's a terrible, terrible thing, but many people do it. So they bury the electric fence under the ground, and then when the dog crosses the fence, he gets a shock. It's terrible. But when you don't set up decision boundaries for your teams, that's what it feels like to the team. That they think they can run here, and they get there. And you do that often enough, and you get teams that are scared to make any decision. They're just scared to make any decision because they're afraid they're going to get that electric shock in their neck. Okay. Every self-organizing team has some balancing acts that they need to deal with. And these are useful to talk about when you're starting out with a team. These come from some research by a woman named Rashina Hoda. How many of you have heard of Rashina Hoda? Anyone? Okay, she did her PhD work on self-organizing agile teams. Very interesting work. Her PhD thesis is available online if you just Google Rashina Hoda. But she's the one who first articulated these balancing acts in this way. There's always a balance between learning and delivery. Teams can't just spend all their time learning, they have to deliver. But if teams only focus on delivery, they won't learn how to learn together, and so you won't get the benefit of the team effect. So this is another area where clarity is important, because if you tell a team, we really want you to be improvement-oriented. We want you to continuously improve your skills and continuously improve the product. We want you to have retrospectives. But there's never any time to act on any of that. You're back in that circle, right? It sends a very confusing message to people. So having a conversation about this is very helpful. Yes, delivery is important. Yes, learning is important. And, we're going to have Fridays, one Friday a month or one afternoon a week or whatever it is in your company where the team gets to decide what they're going to work on to improve their processes, to improve their technical skills, to get rid of some technical debt, to clean up some things that need to be cleaned up. That's the sort of message that lets teams really know, yeah, we want you to be a team. We really want you to improve. So having that discussion is very helpful. And thinking about it and thinking how much is the company really willing to put into investing in this team and having them have the ability to come up with new routines, because people can't do that if they don't have time, is a key question, right? If you really want to stifle learning and you really want to lead disengagement, then you have constant pressure to deliver. Because people are not going to be creative, people are not going to take risks when they're under constant delivery pressure. So we need to balance that. My specialization versus our work. This happens very often in teams that are coming out of organizations where there are very narrow job descriptions, where it's like, I'm a tester, I'm a developer, and I develop. I'm a UI person, and I do UI, and that's all I do. So thinking about what you're delivering as something that is ours is very powerful. And the best way I know to get people, or one of the good ways, there's obviously other ways, but one of the ways I usually use to help people get out of this is my work, into thinking about our work, is coming up with a definition of done. How many of you have a definition of done on your teams? Yeah, some of you. It's a really great way to make it clear that all of us have to pitch in here. And if we are getting towards the end of the iteration and we've completed all of our stories and the developers are sitting around without something to do, it's not their job to go get another story. It's their job to pitch in and get the testing done, because that's our work, right? Our work is this whole piece of software, this whole feature or part of a feature that we're doing in this iteration. It's not, well, we got our job done, it's the testers who made us late. Anybody ever have that happen in their life, that we got our work done, it's the testers? That's never happened to anybody in this room? Oh, okay, one person. You guys must live in a much better universe than I do. Well, you live in France. Okay, that explains it. All right. The balancing act of autonomy and responsibility. This goes back to setting some boundaries around decisions, because that helps people know where their autonomy is. But psychologically, I think it's also useful to talk about this, because the teams that get into that space of saying, we don't need no stinking managers, don't bother us, we're on our own, are the ones who are tilted towards autonomy, and they've kind of forgotten that they have a responsibility to the organization. So we have to talk about that balance, because there is a responsibility always to consider the big picture, consider how the work fits into the goals of the organization, how it contributes value to customers. So that's that part of that balancing act. Here's where we have autonomy, here's where we have responsibility. One of the things that comes up on teams once in a while is that the manager needs to know the progress of their work. And some naive teams will say, why are you coming and asking us all those questions? You're micromanaging. Well, it can feel that way if someone is constantly asking you how you're doing. How are you doing on that? Is that going to be done on Thursday? Are you done yet? That can feel like micromanaging. But there are other ways so that managers have the information they need in a way that doesn't feel like mistrust. It doesn't feel like micromanaging. So task boards, Kanban walls, various information radios, public progress posters. Anybody have some sort of something on their wall? Yeah, that's one easy way to make that, to help balance that. Because when it's obvious what the team is working on, then the managers can kind of breathe a sigh of relief and let go of some of their anxiety because they know what's going on, right? So teams have a responsibility to make sure that their work is visible to other parts of the organization, to make sure that it's valuable in terms of their connection with the customer and their understanding of what the customer is doing. So that's the launch. Making sure that these things are discussed, making sure some of these things are in place in terms of decision boundaries. They may change over time, but it's very useful to have those conversations when you're launching the team. It's also very useful for folks to get to know who is on the team and to get to know a bit more about what their skills are. We usually know, going back to those job descriptions, what someone's job description is, but that does not necessarily tell us what their skills are. So having a broader conversation about those skills can be critical. There are many, I've seen this come up in studies many times where the scarce skills, if someone has an unusual skill that's not widely shared on the team, it takes them 30 times of saying that or bringing it up for that information to get into the group. So anything you can do to talk about what are the unusual skills we have related to this work, what have we done on other projects that we've been on, can help make that available to the team and speed their learning. Also getting really, really clear on what the goal is. Sometimes I use pair discussions where I'll have people describe what they think the goal is so that we can find any disconnects early. Is very, very helpful. 30% of the variation comes from the way the team is brought together and the way you launch them. Okay, so the 10%. 10% has to do of effectiveness, variability and effectiveness has to do with the interventions that happen. And sometimes this happens. You know, the managers feel like, oh, well, you're self-organizing, I can go away. Woohoo, bye. I'll go do other things. In reality, there's a balancing act for managers. Because managers need to pay attention to, are they waiting too long or are they intervening too soon? Right? You can always ask if a team needs help. Right? Asking is more likely to keep us out of that circle than coming in and telling a team what they're doing wrong or telling a team to hurry up or telling a team to do something else. On the other hand, waiting too long is as big a problem. I worked with one group who their managers told them they were self-organizing now, so they should be able to take care of things, including a programmer who the manager had stuck them with who wasn't working out very well. And he wouldn't in stand-up tell what he was doing. He'd just say, I'm coding, and I'll be done if you just leave me alone. But the more you ask me, the longer it's going to take. Just leave me alone. And, the team talked to him, and their coach talked to them. They had various discussions, but he still wouldn't talk about what he was really doing. He ended up threatening to slap one of the women on the team. And when that happened, they finally said, he threatened to slap her and then said, well, you were at the dentist today. You had Novocaine. You won't even feel it. It's kind of frightening behavior. So the team finally went to their manager and said, we don't know what to do with this guy. We've done everything we can think of. And the manager said, well, you're self-organizing. You figure it out. So that's waiting too long. Another team I talked to, the manager called me up and said, we have a team that's been going on for 2 years and they haven't delivered anything, but I don't want to interfere with their self-organization. And I said, get in there right now. 2 years is too long, obviously. So there's a balancing act because you don't want to send yourself back into that cycle. So how you intervene as a manager, I think, is critical. And asking, making suggestions about process are going to be more likely to enhance the ability of the team to self-organize rather than going in and telling them what's wrong and what they should do about it. So this is also from research from Hackman and Wageman. We spend a lot of money on coaches. Anybody here work as an Agile coach? No, some of you, okay. The companies spend a lot of money on management and coaching, and the research shows that if you have a well-designed team, meaning that you have paid attention to the initial conditions and you've paid attention to the launch, and you have competent coaching, that team will soar. They'll really do well. If you have a well-designed team, you spend a lot of attention to the initial conditions and the launch, and you have a kind of a not very competent coach, it won't hurt them much. It might help them a little bit. If you have a poorly designed team and you have excellent coaching, competent coaching, it's not going to help much. If you have a poorly designed coaching, you have poor coaching, which is someone coming in and saying, you're doing this wrong, here's how to fix it. That team's chance of successful self-organization just went out the door. So, we're going to pay money for coaches and we're going to pay managers to help teams. It really behooves us to put our attention where we have the most leverage. And that's in the initial conditions and in establishing that team and that launch. So I want to share a little quote with you because it comes from a team I worked with. I love these two sentences. I spent some time with them when they were just starting out, helping them understand their work, giving them some basic guidance about how to self-facilitate, how to manage the flow of ideas in their group. And then I went away. I got to come back and see their final product, and it was fabulous. They had done something really amazing. And one of them came up to me and said, "We're really glad you left." Which at first it was like, oh, well, there's something important for me to learn here. And then he said, "We couldn't have done it with you here. That's why we're glad you left. But we couldn't have done it without you at the start." So, pay attention to your teams, get them on a good start, launch them well into the world, and you will be rewarded with a great experience for the people who work on your teams, and great results for your company. So, I believe there's time for questions. Okay.